Good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here at this event that's provided to you by Alumni Relations and the School of Management. It's our inaugural Leadership Essentials event, which is really a relaunch of an event series that we had for the last few years called Reconnections. And the idea of Leadership Essentials is to bring alums back to the university, to bring students out of the classroom, to have them network, meet each other while we are providing some professional development. Professional development tonight means that you will be getting some advice on goal setting. And let me talk a little bit about advice. Being an academic, or being academics, we have a few faculty colleagues in the audience, we're really being brought up to be critical. So when you start out, when you're a doctoral student, you are educated to be critical with your peers and texts and with yourself sometime, and then you become a professor, and then you have the pleasure of being critical with students and torturing them with assignments and exams, and then when you become a dean, you can be critical with your faculty members. So as academics, we don't take advice very easily. But tonight, we are proud to bring you somebody who I would be happy to take advice from anytime. Primo Custodio, Senior Vice President at Comcast NBC Universal for Human Resources in Operations and Technical Services. He is a double alum of Cal Lutheran. He graduated from what was then the ADAP program. It is now the Professionals program, and then from the MBA program at the School of Management. He has been the Vice President of Human Resources for NBC Universal since September 2001, and in his role, Primo oversees the human resources function for the MediaWorks division that comprises of studio operations, production, and post-production, strategic initiatives, analysis, sourcing, West Coast real estate, and environmental health services. He began his career with NBC Universal in 1988 and has held various positions in employee benefits, training and development, labor relations, staffing, employee relations. And during his tenure with the company, he has overseen the human resources team through 5 significant mergers and acquisitions. Wasn't Comcast number 6? Yes, it was. So number 6, we need to update your bio. If you can survive 6 major mergers and acquisitions in the entertainment industry, you have something to say. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Primo Custodio.
I guess I better turn this on. There we go. Thank you very much, Gerhard, for that introduction. Good evening, and thank you for coming tonight. It's always great to be back on the CLU campus and to speak to students, alumni, and faculty, and certainly tonight's no exception for me. It's the inaugural kickoff for the leadership series that we're having, Leadership Essentials. So honor and privilege for me again to be back on campus. So I want to thank the School of Management, first of all, for inviting me here tonight. And I really want to extend a special thank you to Stacy Swanson. And she doesn't know it, but she helped me on an incredible journey to be here tonight to talk to you. And what I mean by that is she approached me back in October, I think, and said, I'd like you to be a part of the speakers series, and I'd like you to talk about setting goals. And I thought, oh my gosh, thousands and thousands of books have been written about setting goals. Some of us in the room have taught goal setting. Others of us have been in classes for goal setting. So I decided that what I would do tonight is talk to you about the techniques that have worked for me. I'll use myself as an example, and how I got to where I am. So fortunately for the both of us, for you and I, the timing's right. It's the end of the year, and it's that time when we look back into the rearview mirror of our life and say, what did we do in 2014? Which one of those goals did I make? Which one of those goals did I not make? And why didn't I make them? And for me personally, I call it my year-end self-assessment. Primo Custodio always wants to know an answer to the same 2 questions, and that is, the first one, did I meet my personal and professional goals? And the second one is, if I fell short of my goals, why did that happen? Was it okay that it happened? Did I, sacrifice one goal for another? Or did I set a goal that was too high and unrealistic? Because I'm human like everybody else, and you have a tendency to really want to excel in your performance. So this year-end process really requires objectivity on my part. And I don't know about all of you, but for me, objectivity about me, what I do, and who I am is oftentimes very elusive. So I have to have a reality check, and that reality check comes from my friends, mentors, colleagues, to find out, how did I do? How am I doing towards my goals, let's say, at work? So this year-end assessment I bring up because it's very important. When you look at what you accomplished or didn't accomplish in 2014, these are lessons learned, and lessons learned as to why you didn't make a particular goal. And then you take those lessons learned, and it has a cumulative effect because you remember those in 2015, 2016, and actually throughout your entire career. And those lessons learned actually become the foundation later on in our lives for our self-confidence and our self-esteem. I think many times we forget that every single goal we set and every single journey that we go on as a result gives us additional self-confidence because we've achieved something. And all of those achievements, no matter how small they are represented in all of us today, in the confidence we have and the self-esteem we have about who we are and what we do. So here we are in the third, I wrote some notes down. Here we are in the third week of the new year, and like many professionals across the country, I am in a process at work of doing some self-assessment. So today I had to sit down and look at my 2014 goals and look at those I achieved and those I didn't, why I didn't achieve those. And at the same time, my boss in New York is assessing me on those very same goals. And so we sat down and had a very meaningful discussion about which goals I made, why I achieved those goals, and just as important, how did I achieve them? And then for those that I didn't achieve, why didn't I make those goals? And then we sat down. We do this every year, sat down and talked about the 2015 goals. So I share that with you because tonight's subject for me is just very, very timely. So what I'd like to do now is actually move into the presentation. Great. So this is what I want to talk about tonight. I want to talk about why do we set professional and personal goals. I think a lot of times it's obvious to us, but there's a lot more to it as far as I'm concerned than the obvious. And then the self-assessment. Where are you in your professional journey or your academic journey? Really critical question to ask. And then give you some goal-setting guidelines. Are your goals SMART? SMART's a mnemonic or an acronym there and it's that particular mnemonic, I think a lot of people in the room are familiar with it. I believe it's very powerful in getting very concise goals made for the individual. And then I want to talk about some critical checkpoints on the road to achieving your goal. Because a lot of times life throws us curves. And quite frankly, we lose sight of the goal. But goals are really important because they're that beacon in the dark that puts us back on the path, gets us on the road to achieving the goal. I also want to talk about what happens when you don't achieve goals. I think there's a tendency, I know for me, in fact in my review today, there was a moment where I was like, oh my gosh, why didn't I complete that? But what I didn't realize is that I had learned quite a few things in failure. And looking at failure in that context is very important because we all have things we fail at or don't achieve in life. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then some final thoughts on achieving the goal versus the journey. Every time you set a goal, you're on a journey. You embark on that journey. So for all of the students here, you're on a 4-year journey. Your goal is to get a degree, and then you have other goals associated with that degree. So I think, and then I look at the alums that are here, who I talked to tonight, who are in professions, you also have goals. So I'll share that with you. So let's talk about why we set professional goals and personal goals. And I know I'm supposed to emphasize personal goals, which I will, but personal goals are just as important. So you may hear me interchange and go out of either one. I think as human beings, we all have a need to feel a sense of purpose and meaning in our life. And one way to accomplish that is to set professional and personal goals. So these two really create the pathway and the direction to find meaning and purpose. It's that question everybody asks themselves: why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing with this great life I have? Goals help us answer the question. The second thing is decide what you want to achieve in your life. When we set goals, it really helps us define our profession. It helps us understand that goals are targets that we set for ourselves in the future. And these goals, it's important to understand, change all the time. Every decade, for those of you who are freshmen in college, every decade you move through in your life, your goals change. So when I was in my 20s, it was to, gosh, I got to get that management position and I want to work in a big corporation. And now in my 50s, my goal is to mentor the next generation of HR professionals and to give back to the community, CLU, my experiences and share them with you to help you on your journey reaching your goal, whatever that may be. Talk a little bit about success in your life and career. We really need a focus. A career is contingent upon a focus. For those of you that are in school right now, your focus is your major. And then that major may translate later, hopefully, into your profession. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. I had somebody come in my office today with a marketing degree and said, Primo, I think I want to be in HR, but I spent 4 years in marketing. And I said, well, let's sit down and talk about that goal and how we can help you transition from marketing over to HR. We sat down and we put a plan together on that. And then the next one, goals motivate us. We create deadlines. If you're really true to yourself, you meet the deadlines. If you didn't meet the deadlines, you take that objective look and ask, what happened? What didn't I do that I was supposed to do? And then building your self-confidence based on successful achievement of goals. This is very interesting and what I was talking to some of you about tonight earlier. Every single goal we make, no matter how small, it's a journey. We have learned something. We are different as a result of it. And it's that aggregate, and I'm just going to say it again, the cumulative effect of reaching all those personal and professional goals that give us our self-confidence, our self-esteem, a very important foundation for us to have as we get the degree, as we move through our profession, as we become successful in life and our career. And then finally, and this is not my quote, it's actually Mark Hansen, who's a senior vice president of a company called Range Resources in Texas. Without goals, life's routine becomes life's ruts. And I don't think I could say it any better. So when I look at my profession, when I look at my personal life, these are all important factors in terms of why I sit down and I put the goals before me that I did. So conduct a professional or personal self-assessment. This is a must, but this is really difficult. This means that you have to sit down and be objective about your weaknesses as an individual, as a professional, as a student. It means gaining that objectivity I talked to you about earlier. And if you have to talk to friends, mentors, professors, fellow students, do it. Understand who you are, understand your strengths and those areas that you can improve in. I have what I call my personal board of directors. I can dial any of those individuals up and ask them for advice, and they'll give it to me. If I'm struggling with a goal or achieving something, they will help me out. And I think the term a lot of you use is networking. Network, having a strong network is really, really important when you go through the self-assessment. And then take a look back in 2014, for example. I just want to ask this question. How many of you in the room set goals in January of 2014? Can I just see a show of hands? Good. And how many of you who raised your hands achieved those goals? Great. Excellent. Now, if you dare, how many of you didn't achieve the goals? Okay, good. That's honest. I like that, honest showing. So I want to talk, I'll talk a little bit more, about that. But it's important to understand why you didn't achieve the goals, and I had that dilemma today. Why I didn't achieve a particular goal, and what I have to do different next time. And again, it becomes the lessons learned as part of the self-assessment. And then are you paying attention to certain areas in your life? If I look on the personal side, financial, are you good at finances? Are you saving money that you should save? Or let's say some of you who are alums, are you, what about a certain certification that you may want to achieve that you haven't, that you could be better in your job with, or you could contribute to the community more if you had that particular certification. And it's okay to think about yourself because we all have personal goals. I think sometimes the emphasis is on the professional, but we are the people that make up the professional. And then determine what's important. What's really important to you? And that's why I asked this question of, where are you in your life's journey? Are you where you want to be? Are you halfway there? Do you even know where you want to be? And it's okay not to know, because that's part of the journey, is figuring out, gosh, I want to be that doctor, social worker, congressman, senator. It's all part of the self-assessment. And then the last question, which really goes back to the journey question, is what do you want to achieve in your lifetime? Many of you in here are the next doctors, lawyers, politicians for this city, country of ours. And you're really all tomorrow's leaders. So what do you want to achieve in your lifetime? I'm willing to bet that most of you who are in school right now will be able to answer that question by the time you matriculate from the university. So that's part two of, when you're setting goals, is this difficult concept of being introspective about who you are and where it is you want to go. You really have to have a purpose. I can't emphasize that enough. So I thought I'd share this goal-setting framework. So we understand why we set personal and professional goals. We talked a little bit about the self-assessment, taking a real hard look at our strengths and improvement opportunities. And now, once we go through that, there are three questions that work for me. And the first one is, what is it I am trying to achieve? For those of you in school, you want to achieve your degree. How can I achieve it? You have to take certain curriculum, tracks, you have to complete certain competencies, and then what does success look like? For many of you, that success may be walking across the stage. I know it was for me. And it took me 16 years of night school to finish a bachelor's, and in 2006 an MBA from Cal Lutheran. I knew what that success would look like. It was very important to visualize the success. So for me, when I look at that on the bottom, the phrase, I want to achieve this. In my profession, I wanted to achieve a vice president position in a major corporation by doing this. This was getting my MBA at Cal Lutheran, and it was also showing and demonstrating strong leadership skills to the senior management, to the company, and guiding them through 6 different mergers and acquisitions. And success will look like this. I knew what it would look like. It would look like what I'm doing tonight, giving back to the university, giving back to the community. So when you think about this framework, put this in the context of your own journey and your own goals. What is it that you want to do with your life? And the great thing about life is, like the young lady that came in my office today, she went marketing degree. She wants to go into HR. I said, great. Go into HR, get a certificate. Your goal has just changed. And it's changed for some really good reasons. So let's sit down and talk about how you structure the goal. So I wanted to give you an idea of some of the framework questions to ask yourself. Now, I'm going to do the unusual here. Are there questions so far on anything that I've talked about, something that isn't clear? I like this dialogue with the audience, which is why I talked to you earlier today. If you have a question, then please raise your hand, okay? Because I want to make sure I answer the questions, or if something isn't clear, I clarify it for you. So this is, you all know what mnemonics, this is the mnemonic or the acronym SMART. So now I want to move from framework into talking about actually setting goals. So at work, we use the SMART moniker. And there are some questions, and I'll start with specific. When we talk about specific goals, we want to know who's involved in that, what is it I want to accomplish, and what's the time frame, and then what's the reason for the goal. It's always critical. Why am I doing this? What's the reason for the goal? And then it has to be measurable, and that's really about how much, how will I know when it's accomplished. Attainable is simple. Can you reach it? Can you do it? Is it a stretch for you? You knowing you better than anybody else. You conducting that self-assessment. Is the goal really attainable? And then realistic. This is a good one because we are all asked the same question when we set goals. Are we willing to work towards the goal? Are we willing to work towards the goal? And then is it relevant? How does it play out in the scheme of things about what we want to do with our lives? And finally, time-bound or trackable, and I don't believe trackable is a word, and my wife, who's a grammarian, probably would kill me if she saw that. Time-bound. You have to set a deadline, but it's okay to move the deadline because you cannot accomplish a lot of goals in a single year. You just can't. So when I sit down and teach goal setting at work, we take them, the employees, through this particular set of questions. And it's very interesting. It's thought-provoking, especially when you overlay it against your own personal self-assessment. So now we've talked about framework. We've talked about actually setting a goal, following the SMART acronym. And you know what it is you want to do. You know what it is you want to achieve. But then life throws us these out of the blue, softballs and knock us down and we get off track. Or we just get distracted by life or our professions in general. So these are some things that have helped me a lot. The first one is I've always got to remember my dreams and ambition. My dream was to do this, was to give back. My dream was to, at some point, mentor the next generation of HR people. I always had that in sight. Now, you heard me say earlier, 16 years of night school. So something happened along the way there, and it's called life. But I didn't give up because I knew what I wanted. And I said that earlier to all of you. Goals are very effective. They're that beacon in the dark that puts us back on the path, and we get where we need to go. And it's okay to do that. I'm telling you right now, it's okay to postpone it. Success is one step at a time. We live in a really fast society. Internet, we want things now. We have information at our fingertips. It's important to remember the cadence of success. In my business in Hollywood, yeah, success overnight for an actor, a singer, whomever. That very few of us have that opportunity. You need to sit down and think about the cadence of success. What does that look like for you? And then set up deadlines. We talked about that earlier. Deadlines are really our commitment to reach the goal. And if you are conscientious about, and you disregard the deadline, I'm going to tell you that you're really disregarding yourself and everything that you're moving towards. List all your obstacles. Do you know, for example, when you came to CLU and chose your major, Did you know what the obstacles were going to be? Probably some of you did. Maybe you did a self-assessment and said, God, I hate studying. I was terrible in high school. But I'm going to try better. I'm going to do this, this, and that. In that case, perhaps you were your own obstacle. But then there are other obstacles that are outside of the individual. And some of it's just getting through the rigor of academia, getting the degree, can be an obstacle to some people. 4 years is a long time. So you need to think about what the obstacles are and how you will handle them and overcome them, and go to the network, go to your personal board of directors, have people use the resources to help you deal with that. Information you'll need to complete the journey is critical. Once you assign yourself a personal goal, what do you need to know about it? What's all the information that you have to aggregate to be successful in reaching it? How are you going to utilize the resources you have, or what resources do you need to acquire to get to the goal? I've talked enough about listening to people, asking for assistance or guidance, but that network is key. You all have a network in here. You all have friends that you rely on. You email, Facebook, Snapchat, whatever. Those are all important vehicles in your network to help you with assistance and guidance, and certainly you should use it. And then changing priorities and experiences. As you go along in life, we have these experiences that make us look at our goal and say, well, maybe I don't want to do that. The young lady that came in my office today is a perfect example. She just said, you know what, I like marketing, but gosh, this human resource thing, if I have to go back and get another degree, I will, or I'll get a certification. It was clear when she walked into my office today, whatever experiences she had in marketing really had changed her goal. Now, sounds contradictory to staying the course, but I will tell you, in the context of her evaluating her goal and having achieved it as far as she was concerned, that goal transitioned, and it transitioned into getting into human resources. And then finally, making a decision to succeed. What does that look like? Making a decision to succeed. It's a huge commitment on our part that we're going to see this thing through. And I bet every person in this room, when you had something you really want to accomplish, you got it done. I don't care if it's sports, class, hobbies, research, you got it done. If you can take that motivation and drive from doing what you like really well and apply it to your goals, that helps you in this decision to succeed. You'll do it every time. So what happens when the goals are not met? This was a tough one for me today. Business or life can delay accomplishment of goals. Business, this was the 6th merger and acquisition for me, and some policies and procedures had changed that I didn't think was going to happen. And I think as people, when we don't make a goal, the first thing we'll do is, kind of be too introspective and start beating ourselves up. But therein lies the problem, because every goal that we didn't meet, we learned something here. We were on a journey. We didn't get to the destination, but there are I always encourage people, 2 or 3 things, what did you learn? So once you get through the emotions and all of that of not making the goal, then sit down and take another look and say, what did I learn? What are those 2 or 3 things? That's the way to look at failure or development opportunity and turn it around right away. It helps you get back on track, back to the goal, and back to the accomplishment. So here are some questions to ask yourself. Why wasn't it accomplished? Was it timing, change in business? For me today, mine was a change in business. I felt bad about it, but I also understood I had no control. And the one thing we do have control over in goals is our performance. And that was kind of a lesson learned for me today. Identify internal and external factors that are in my control or out of my control. This was not in my control, and I had, for whatever reason, said, you know what, this is in your control, you'll be able to do this. And the lesson I learned for next year's goal is I'm really going to sit down through the SMART mnemonic and make sure that I look at what I have control of in achieving the goal. And then discuss performance gaps that might have prevented you from achieving the goal. Is a performance gap you? Are you the one that fell short? Did you not keep the deadlines? Did you not keep your commitment to yourself? You know, what message are you sending yourself about goals in general and the ambitions that you have? Excuse me. And then despite the goal not being met, highlight the positives that result from working the goal. This is really critical in dealing with failure when you don't make a goal. You know, maybe you failed the class like I did when I was here. I think it was management sciences and business. Oh my gosh, Dr. Akbar, he pulled me in and looked at me and said, can I talk to you for a second? I go, and I knew I was in trouble. I was like, okay. And he goes, right brain or left brain? I was like, what? He goes, right brain or left brain? I said, I'm creative. He goes, talk to me about your experiences with math. Did you have a terrible teacher? It was really, and he had an interesting psychology about it. But what he did is he made me stop and analyze why I didn't pass that test. And I ended up getting a B in the class. But I didn't meet the goal. The goal was to get through the first test in management science with an A or a B. And then finally, provide a timeline as to when you expect to achieve the goal. It means really putting your pedal to the metal kind of thing and saying, okay, this is a realistic time for me to have accomplished college, what have you. For me, 16 years in night school, I was supposed to have done it in 8. But it's called having a family, raising kids, and going through 6 different mergers and acquisitions and trying to build a career in human resources. So I kept adjusting the timeline based on those external factors out of my control, and it was a very positive thing and led me here today. So questions so far, thoughts, comments from anyone? Yes, in the back. Okay. Do you have a network of people? Yeah. So you kind of have your own personal board of directors. Is there anybody that you know well enough that you can sit down and have that discussion with before I answer your question? It's important to get another perspective from your peers or mentors, people that you trust. Beating ourselves up is, I think, quite frankly, very human. The real trick to this is understanding when you start doing it. And so what I would ask you is, if you're going to change that behavior, you want to identify right away when it becomes beating yourself up. It's okay to sit down and say, you know what, I didn't make that, and here's why. But if a week later you're going, oh my gosh, I was so stupid, why do I do that? Then that's taking it out too long. It's not really what I call a productive self-assessment. So if you can find that benchmark, and you can stop yourself, and your network, if you can have friends, mentors, colleagues, professors, whomever, help you or call you on it, that works too. We do that in the leadership team I'm in. We just, at work, we've made a pact with one another that if Primo Custodio starts going off on this tangent, we call it alligator roll, where I'm just spinning on ideas, they will call me on it and say, up, alligator roll. And I know right away that I become too effusive, too loquacious, too chatty. So hopefully that helps you with that. And you know what I think? Because you're aware of it, you're miles ahead of the game. It's the individuals that aren't aware of it where it becomes, it's really difficult to deal with. That was a really good question. Thank you. How about somebody else? Any thoughts, ideas? She's broken the ice. She's asked the first question. Thank you. Yes. Sure.
I guess the surroundings and environment, what was it that, again, the lesson learned, why did I not meet my goal?
Right.
I look at that, objectively. But, when you're just out of school, I think you think you can take the world, and you think you can change everything and everybody, and sometimes you find that you don't. And then that's when I think reality hits it, okay, this is what I can do, and I can do it this way from now on.
So being realistic, you will never hear me tell you or anyone else at whatever point we are in our career that you can't change the world to make a difference, because I think you can. But you bring up a very good point. I mean, I was a late bloomer and went to school late, but I still had that, it was really managing my expectations of, wow, I have this MBA, and whatever job I want, here I come, That was not realistic, I found out. But it was a very normal thing to do, and your question's really well taken. Because once you get out of school, or when you get the new job, you have to balance your expectations against the reality of the industry, the job that you have. So you raise a really good point. Yes?
Your goals may not be the same goals the organization has set goals as well.
That's right.
Those goals as well.
So her question was, we have our goals and the organization has their goals, and therein lies a lot of conflict. And I have some thoughts on that because we work for an organization and there's kind of a give and take there. And the real art is knowing when you can acquiesce on certain points and still be true to the values you have and still come to a consensus about the goal that's best for the company. And you're right, because there are many times in my job where I've had to say, especially in acquisition and mergers, I'd have to say, gosh, this really is about me, and it can't be about me. It has to be about NBC Universal. It has to be about the employees who are working every day, who are going to go through this transition and merger, who may not have a job, or who are out there wondering, gosh, do I have a job? What does my new success profile look like? So your question is really good, and there is an art to it, and it takes a while, to balance that out. And some people leave organizations. I've had people walk to my office and said, you know what? I am philosophically opposed with the way the technology is moving in this company. And my goal is to push as a, as a software architect, push or drive a certain amount of technology in a direction here. And I understand that. It's unfortunate we lost that individual, but they left on principle. But we found, but there was someone else, and we sat down and worked through that. So thank you. Is it Alvia? Yeah, thank you, Alvia. That was a good question. Anybody else?
Well, it kind of goes along those lines. Do you recommend a certain number of goals? No more than
I
10?
say
No.
3.
Otherwise, it's sort of going along those lines of if you set yourself up with too much expectation and then, it's harder to achieve. What's your recommendation?
Right, that's a really good question. That's why I go by the SMART acronym or mnemonic. What's realistic? What can you accomplish? That's really the question you have to answer. It's great to say, oh, wow, I've got 8 or 9 goals, and I'm going to get them all done during the year. But really, are you going to do those 8 or 9 goals well? Is it just a matter of, getting through and accomplishing them? There's that how side. How did you get it done that becomes important. So to answer your question, Stacy, I only recommend 2 or 3. And they have to be tied into that self-assessment. Where am I in my life's journey? Education, career. What are my dreams and ambitions? What is it that I want to do? Those goals have to be tied in there. And if you start getting, 5, 10, 15, I think you lose sight of the purpose. So for me, personally speaking, the goal was to be vice president of HR in a large corporation. There were many different subsidiary goals, if you will, that I had to have to get there. I had to get an MBA. And that was going to take me 6 years of night school. I also had to spend those 6 years demonstrating leadership abilities that would appeal to these companies. 6 mergers and acquisition is a lot. So I'm kind of being circuitous in answering your question. Sorry, I don't mean to, but 2 or 3 generally is what I recommend. How many people here do more than 3 goals? Well, good for you. It really is a balancing act and my hat goes off to you. At work, we tell our employees 2 to 3. It's like, I'll make the analogy of being a student. You don't want to take 32 units every quarter, every semester. It doesn't work. You spread yourself too thin. So that was a very good question. Thank you. Yes, Nathan.
My question is, my goals are important to me. I work hard to achieve those goals, but it's also important that people invest in my goals. So do you have any strategies for how do I get my employer to invest in my goals, or to put that kind of value in them too, so that they're helping me to accomplish them?
Really great question. How do I get my employer to invest in my goals? I think part of it is, I'd ask you the hard-hitting question of, why should I invest in your goals? What is it for me? Okay, mutual benefit. Then you would have to convince me, tell me what that mutual benefit is. Because we don't invest time or money as individuals in something that doesn't appeal to us, doesn't give the results that we want. So we can talk afterwards. I think it depends on, what goals you're achieving in the company, and are they willing to give you resources, to your point, about achieving the goal. Because you and I, if I'm your employer, you and I are going to have to be on the same page here, and I'm going to have to see a benefit for the company, for you, and for you also. And a lot of times that works. But the trick is showing the benefit of the goal. And more importantly, like sales and marketing, how are you going to get us there? What assurances do you have me? So make sure you have a plan, that you're well thought out, that you have a really good, strong pitch, and that it's kind of a win-win for everybody. Does that help a little bit? Okay. Yes, sir, in the back.
So one of your questions was, what do I want to achieve in my lifetime? So for you personally, you're in your 50s, so on. So what do you think, for 5, 10 years from now, what do you want your kids to say at your funeral? How does that change what you're going to do in the next 5 years?
I think this is a microphone. Put it down. I actually like that question, because this is one of the thoughts I had tonight. What do you want to do in your lifetime? I was going to use that analogy of sit down and write what is going to be said at your funeral about you. This is excellent. What do you want people to say about how you lived your life and how you impacted? Very, very important. And now I forgot the first question you asked me, because it was such a good concept.
What are you going to do in the next 5 years in order to achieve that? Whatever it is for you personally, how, if you look at your lifetime,
Right.
what are you going to do differently over the next 5 or 10 years in order to achieve that goal, whatever that lifetime goal is?
I will transition out of corporate America into either consulting or giving back to the various business communities or universities, anything I can do to share. That's what I'm going to do. In my 20s, it was, since you asked the question, in my 20s, it was getting that job, man, got to have the money. Then when 30s, it was like, ooh, gosh, there are kids, and gosh, what's happening? And boy, I just better be stable. And then the 40s roll along, and it's like, okay, these kids are getting ready to go out of the house, and what about, where am I here? In a series of things. And that's when, was actually in the 30s, this thing about, my goal about being a vice president happened. So to answer your question, I'm kind of being circuitous again. It would really be to move out of corporate America and do something on a much smaller scale. I have a very big job. It is very, very difficult. It's challenging. It's wonderful. People are lined up outside of my door for the job, and I know that, and I get that, and I appreciate that. And quite frankly, I love what I do. 6 mergers and acquisitions is exhausting. I'm not going to do another one. And I made that really clear in my review the other day. I'm done with this, and Comcast had said very publicly that they're here to stay. They're not going to be like GE or Seagram and through the company. So that's what I hope to do. And you ask an interesting question, because I just finished my personal year-end assessment and actually liked what I saw and what I accomplished. But when you start talking about sunsetting a career, which is in your 50s, some people, at least I do, think of that, then what becomes the next great transition? And I look at people in 60s and 70s who are having a tremendous impact on communities, on people's lives. So to me, there's a lot of potential in there for me to do that. So it was a really good question. That funeral analogy is wonderful. I sat through a lecture where the gentleman posed that to all of you. What would you like to have said about you when you die? What are they going to read and say, this wonderful person? And stop and think about those things you want to be remembered for. And how does that fit into this journey you're on in your life and your career? Really good. Thank you very much. Any other thoughts or questions? Yes, ma'am.
For your 2 to 3 goals that you mentioned before, would you say to accomplish maybe goals that you would achieve within like the year, or do you think it's okay to have goals that might like stretch longer within that year?
I think it's okay, depending on the goal, to have them go into 2 and 3 years. For me professionally, I have several goals that have actually taken 4 years to accomplish. It's a little longer than I thought, but there were changes. So I would encourage you not to lock yourself down or beat yourself up if you don't achieve the goal. The important thing, as I said earlier, is find out, why didn't you make it the first time, let's say in that year? And then did you have control over those factors? And then push that goal out. The important thing is accomplishing it. And you want them to be time-bound. But if you can give yourself permission that it's okay to extend the goal, and permission here is the operative word, then you're all set. Because it doesn't become about moving the deadline and, oh gosh, I didn't make it. It becomes about being very realistic and saying, okay, not in 2014, 2015 looks really good. And here's how I'm going to achieve it. So, yes, by all means. Yes?
How does that differ from procrastinating?
Oh, how does that differ from procrastination?
Extending it.
Right.
Extending it and moving it.
Procrastination, at least the way I understand the term, means that you procrastinate. You don't do what it is you're supposed to do for a myriad of reasons. Moving the goal forward, in my mind, if you look at the reasons why, the lessons learned, whatever it is you didn't accomplish it, that's very different. Because not doing something and procrastinating is very different than looking at this goal and saying, gosh, you know what? I'm kind of an overachiever on this. It wasn't realistic in the first place for me to say 1 year. It's actually 18 months. It should have been 18 months. And that's a lesson learned and the look back and the self-assessment and all that. That is very different than, oh yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, I'll get to that. Yeah, it's procrastinating versus a realistic movement of that end date. I don't know if that made sense or not. And we could talk afterwards if it didn't. How about some other questions? These are really great, actually. I always like an engaged audience. Yes?
I wonder if we could talk a little bit about what you called your board of directors, your mentors and people. I've noticed, personally for me, my board of directors are very varied in that I have some who work with me and know me very well with what I do intimately at work and exactly what I need, and and a few of them are higher up than me, so they can help me move obstacles. Other ones are more personal friends, and they know my personality and what stands in the way for me personally with my personality and stuff like that. And I was just wondering if you could, do you seek out people who know different variations of you and for different reasons?
I do the exact same thing that you do. I have all these concentric circles around me. And on each one of those concentric circles are 1 or 2 of my board members. And the further out they are, they look at me from a very different perspective than those who are right 1 or 2 circles out. I want that dichotomy of opinion about me. I want them to view me from different angles, because when I put the aggregate together of all those people like you do, I generally get a good objective look at who I am. So I would tell you that you're absolutely doing the right thing. You want people close to you, You want professional people who are close on a different basis. And you want people who know you in different environments, which is really key.
I was also wondering too, if when you select these people, some of mine are formal mentors, like I went through programming.
Perfect.
He is my mentor. Other ones just kind of, they're just my good friends, and I'll call them up and ask them for advice. How do you gather your circle?
It depends on what the issue is I'm trying to address. I always keep everybody in the circle, but I want to have I want to have a variation of opinions and people and different parts, different industries. And depending on the issue, it really depends on who I call. So this goal I was really struggling with at work. I called other HR professionals about that goal. And then I took some of my clients, my executives that I support, and I kind of polled them. And then I sat down and looked at all the notes and kind of put it all through a funnel, a distillation. And what I got was I need to be much more, aggressive isn't the word, much more forward about presenting my ideas for changing HR policies and procedures. I thought I was being really great about it. But then, like you, I got those different perspectives. And when you get that consensus from those different groups, you say to yourself generally, maybe they're right. And then, of course, you have to decide. I have to decide whether they're right or not, or how much I'm going to use of that to change behavior or revise the goal. Does that help? Okay. How about some other questions? And I know we're, yes, in the back.
Kind of goes back to my first question, but I was thinking about how kind of your journey to where you are now. When you have to take kind of side steps, like other jobs or other opportunities, how do you kind of keep yourself focused and keep yourself upbeat about what you're doing instead of just saying, oh, I hate this job? Like, how do you make the best of it and just say, you know what, I will do this? Like, what's the best option?
When I have hated jobs, and I've hated a lot of them, I came to the realization that the most successful people I know do what they hate really well. You would never know they hated it. And so I made a goal, and it's taken several years, and I'm still working on it, to learn to do that which I don't like well. It's kind of like these behavioral counselors that tell these type A personalities, when you go into the supermarket, get in the longest line. Slow yourself down. They can't do it, and I totally get it. But does that make sense to you? It's a real challenge. The humdrums. And I have things in my job that drive me nuts. I mean, they're just crazy. But I took that approach. I said, you know what? I'm going to do it really well. In fact, somebody came up and said, gosh, I know you like that kind of stuff. And I was very honest. I said, I don't. I go, but I don't want you to know that. But I had to go through this process and, hey, well, I'm there. I'll do it. So does that help?
Yes.
Okay, good
I'm
question.
in that position right now, and I'm in that position right now, and I'm trying to figure out a way to just not be ashamed of the fact that I'm kind of taking a side step in my journey. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and the answer to that question is you have to convince yourself that there's no shame in sidestepping, that sometimes we have to step to the side, and it's okay. It's like taking the 2 steps backwards to take 4 steps forward. And I would offer that it's a really important concept for you to understand. You have to give yourself the license and the okay that it's all right for me to sidestep. Because I would offer you still know what you want to do. You have that goal, right? And sidestepping is that darkness I referred to earlier. And focus on the goal. Sometimes I put Post-its on the bathroom mirrors, and when I get up in the morning, okay, remember, you're on track to, this is the goal, this is what you want to accomplish. And you have to have those little reminders. So give yourself a license to sidestep. It's okay. It's all right to do that. That was a really good question. Yes?
How do you deal with people, like I have people that are in my network of people, whether it's friends or coworkers, that I feel always seems to like bring you down or so negative,
Yeah.
or they always make it about themselves, and I just feel like they're not really being like a good friend or trying to like lift me up, or always has something negative to say about like your goals.
I don't know that you're going to change that it's productive to expect those people who are toxic, negative, to lift you up. I don't know how close these people are to you, coworkers and what have you, but the best
From
thing you can
years.
do is surround yourself, and we all hear this, with really positive people. Now, I would, we all have to work with that person we just can't stand, and they're always chatting, and oh, so-and-so's terrible, did you see what she did, and I can't believe what she did this weekend, and at some point you and I have to turn that off, and then change the dynamic of the people you hang around with, and really start limiting that discussion with those individuals. And pretty soon, somebody's going to come up to you and say, hey, you don't talk to me much anymore. What's that? What's up with that? And that's an opening for you to sit down and say, well, you know what? I'm a really positive person. And a lot of times when you're around me, all you do is talk about the negative. And I'm not about the negative. I respect your opinion, and you can do that. And so two things are happening there. One, you're changing the dynamic of who you associate with. And number two, when the opportunity arises, you're talking to the person in a nice, professional way, because you have to work with them or sit across from them. You're saying to them, hey. And you can do it in a very thoughtful manner. That it's not, oh, who is she? Well, she just came over here and told me I'm, Debbie Downer, and I'm just a drag, and I'm pulling her down. And you don't want that to happen, which is why even at work when I counsel employees and managers in these conflict situations, the delivery is important. So something for you to think about. Yes, I'm sorry. Am I out of time? Great. I only had one more slide, and that is, Henry David Thoreau said, what you get by achieving your goals is not as important as what you become by achieving them. And that's kind of been a theme for me tonight with the self-assessment, with looking at the aggregate of all the goals that you've achieved in your life and that wonderful foundation you built of self-esteem and confidence. Cannot forget that. So that is it. You're a great audience. I love the questions. Thank you all very much. Yes, in the back. One more.
Just one more. Well, actually, it's a two-part question.
Okay.
As an HR professional, seeing young people come in, do you feel that colleges and universities are preparing them for the realities of the workplace versus academia?
To answer your question, yes. It is preparing students to come in. What the internet and social media are doing is not preparing these students with good social skills when they come into work. I had a conflict in my office the other day, and they did it all over email. And I said, oh my gosh, did you ever think of picking up the phone? No, why would I do that? I said to talk to them, but why would I do that? And some of this, and I'm not dinging the millennials, but I got to tell you, it's an issue for us in the workplace. Or they use notes, electronic notes to talk. And I get them in to try to resolve issues, and it's like, wow, you don't have any social skills. This is kind of frightening. Great, you're really smart and you're brilliant, but wow, you're a new supervisor. You don't know how to talk to this person. You're doing it all on email, and of course the employee comes in with a stack of emails that high and says, this is how I'm being managed. This is wrong. They've never talked to me once. So that's a long answer to that. So thank you so much. And we'll talk afterwards if you want around. And thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Primo.
Oh, you're welcome.
You've given us such a gift by presenting to us today. We have a small gift for you to say thank you.
Thank you so much.
We all
I could do
appreciate you
that.
being here
Great.
and
Thank you
spending
very
your
much.
time and sharing your knowledge.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it, Shannon. And thank all of you. Whoa.